It's this way, sir. It's this way. We just have to walk there. It's this way.
Leave me! Help me! Leave! Back in 1996, I used to work as a truck driver for Rouge Tomato Ketchup. I was doing the job of delivering ketchup from the company's manufacturing plant in my town to its distribution centers. Keep in mind that it was common for me to have extremely long hours of driving on highways and country roads because my company's distributors were mostly far away at large cities than rural areas. I was working in what my colleagues and I called the switching method. My colleagues were 4 people: Timothy, John, Michael, and Richard. They kept switching with me to work in either the day, afternoon, or night shift. We usually switched our shifts on a weekly basis. While switching on one occasion, it was concluded that my colleagues would work the day and afternoon shifts while I was to do the night shift for the whole week ahead. During one of my nights driving in the country roads, I came across a young woman standing in the middle of the road. Her silhouette was barely visible in the dim glow of my headlights. As I approached, I could see her hair and her torn clothes. Panic struck me as I slammed on the brakes, bringing the truck to a screeching halt. I rolled down the window and asked, "Hey, are you okay? What are you doing out here?" The woman's eyes were hollow and her gaze seemed to pierce through my soul. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but concern overpowered my fear. I offered her a ride, thinking she might be stranded or in trouble. Without saying a word, she climbed into the passenger seat. The truck's interior suddenly felt colder, and an unsettling silence settled in. I tried to make a small talk, asking about her name or where she needed to go, but she remained eerily silent. As I continued driving, the surroundings seemed to change. The familiar country roads transformed into a desolate and fog-covered landscape. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, the woman pointed towards a narrow dirt road veering off from the main path. She whispered, "Take that road, and you'll find what you seek." A chill crawled up my spine as I hesitantly followed her directions. I thought she was genuinely asking for help because she still spoke at a very soft and sheepish tone, to be what I later found out. The path led to an abandoned farmhouse, overgrown with vines and hidden in thick fog. As we arrived, a group of masked figures emerged from the shadows surrounding the truck. It was then I realized that I had fallen into a trap. The woman, seemingly cooperating, had been used as a bait. Fear gripped me as one of the masked figures ordered me to get out of the truck with a large knife. When I got down, I begged them to leave me alone, but they mercilessly chuckled, and one of them kicked me in my stomach. They immediately took my phone and my wallet. One guy took the money in the wallet and put it into his pocket, while the other gave my phone to the girl who went inside shortly after. Those men were strong, so they were easily able to pin me down to the ground and tie me up. After I was tied up, they demanded a ransom, threatening to harm my loved ones if I didn't comply. Panic surged through me as they handed me a phone, instructing me to call my family. When I refused and started crying instead, one of the men kicked me again and I passed out. After a few minutes, I woke up to see the men leaving the room I was in and ordering a smaller guy out of them to stay with me along with the girl. I knew that this was my chance to escape. I called out to the guy who stayed back and told him that I had to use the washroom. He was stupid enough to untie me. I took this opportunity to grab a beer bottle nearby and smack him on the head. With one blow, he fell to the ground. The girl who saw this was very intimidated. She tried to take me down, but I punched her in the face and she passed out. I ran outside immediately and reached my truck, which was still parked at the front of the farmhouse. I thought I could get into my truck and drive away as fast as possible, but the men were smart enough to lock it and take the keys with them. When I tried to get my phone out and call the police, two things happened. A car was pulling into the driveway of the farmhouse, and the smaller guy I knocked out came charging towards the direction of my truck. I ran and ducked down behind some tall bushes a few yards away. The men who left before were back, and the smaller guy I knocked out was telling them something. It seemed like they were having a heated argument about my escape. I couldn't make out much from what they were speaking, but I surely heard things like he hit me with a bottle and he wouldn't have gotten far away. As the men were scattered around looking for me, I started to run on the road in hope to see some car that would help me. I eventually forced a car to stop, and he offered me a ride, not to the police station, but my house. It took me a few days to recover from the trauma that I faced that night. Needless to say, my rest of the days in the company were spent in horror and loneliness without my colleagues, who magically disappeared after that night. I did report the incident to the police, but I'm yet to receive any information as to who tried to harm me that night. I sometimes wonder, what if those men were my own colleagues? I heard from my other workers that my colleagues were facing debts they couldn't pay from over gambling. So instead of paying with money, they probably wanted to pay with something else. And I hate to know if whoever, even if it were my colleagues, did it, were successful. Not only that, I don't know why, but I saw the striking resemblance in the eyes of one of those men and my colleague, Richard. I moved to a different country now, but that memory never fades away. I'm just happy that I'm far away from that sickening place. Humans seem like the most nicest creatures on the planet, but it is when something horrifying happens to us that we realize the world is a place full of demons disguised as our kind to ruin our lives.